Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Jay the One-Eyed Gamer video. In today's video, we are talking about one of my most anticipated games of the year, and it finally got brand new information courtesy of the June Nintendo Direct that happened. And we are, of course, talking about Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which looks incredible because we finally got new information on the game after so long. I believe at the time when the Direct went up, we were almost close to 9 months without any new information since the reveal of Fortune's Weave. Honestly, I'm just really happy that we got it. Like, we got a whole brand new trailer going into greater detail about the game, and I just can't wait. I also would like to point out that in my last video I did on the subject, when can we see Fire Emblem, which blew up. I was not expecting that many views on it, like over 3,000. Thank you very much for everyone who watched that. Just to clarify on that one, I did make a prediction when I thought we were going to see new information on the game. I thought we were going to get a shadow drop like we got for Yoshi in the Mysterious Book and Splatoon Raiders. I kind of thought that's how that was going to go. My backup prediction was it was going to show up at the June Direct, but I didn't feel as confident as that one because I thought if it's going to be a summer release game, might as well just do it now in May instead of going all the way to June. But I was wrong, and I am so happy I was wrong, so I just wanted to clarify that. And we have a lot of information, so depending on how long the video is, I might break it up into sections and go over certain things. If I do that, I will leave timestamps in the description so you guys can go to specific times that you want to listen about. But we have so much information to go over on this, and I just can't wait. I'm so excited to talk about this game because really, after seeing this new trailer and all this new information, and of course all the new information that Nintendo was dropping courtesy on X, so that's nice. It's nice to see that the media blitz is finally starting to go. But let's talk about the four main characters because we did get a little more information on them going forward, and I think that's what you guys are looking forward to the most as of this point. So courtesy of the brand new trailer, which I have been using as B-roll footage, we did get some new information on the four main characters. Not like crazy new information, more like a consolidation of things we already knew and some other little visual things that were shown off. So we'll start off with Kai. So Kai is a 15-year-old boy from the countryside who enters the heroic games in order to save his imprisoned father. We already knew all that information, but what's also interesting about Kai at this point now is the fact that we know he has two crests, something that you couldn't usually get naturally in the world. I believe in Three Houses the only way you got that was having the Agarthans literally experiment on you, and that came with great risk because in Three Houses I think there were only two known characters to have dual crests, that being Edelgard and Lysithea, and doing that they lost pretty much the color pigment in their hair, and they also pretty much had dramatically shortened lifespans. So Kai having two of these, and the two crests are, I believe the one crest Yuri has that we already knew about, and then the other crest is the crest that Sylvain has. So I wonder how we got both of those crests. Was he experimented on by the Agarthans? Are the Agarthans even a thing now in this game? These are all speculations for later, but it is interesting to see that. And another thing we get to see is because of that, we don't know if it's because of the crest or not, he has two different eye colors. So when you look at him normally, he has amber colored eyes, but in the trailer you can see that at some point they become red. Now I don't know if that's signified by his dual crest or if it's signified by the thing that's in his left palm, which also seems very interesting because in the trailer it looks like we get to see that that's a jewel that somehow embeds itself into his left palm, if I can find the exact shot where it looks like it's doing that. And I think that's what gives him his blaze art powers and potentially could give him another crest unless he was already naturally born with another crest. Very interesting things to think about. Kai has kind of jumped up a little more in like my interest meter, not as much as the other three, but still this trailer did do a decent amount of showing that, because another thing we see is we finally get a look at his blaze art, and he was one of the few people in the first trailer that we didn't get to see a blaze art for. Now when we actually see Kai using his blaze art, he uses his left hand where the jewel is embedded in, it makes a sigil on it, and then launches an energy ball that travels a pretty good distance to an enemy, and when it hits it does massive damage to that enemy. But it's not done after that. After it takes out the enemy, it then does a scatter shot of a pretty good range after him, taking out I believe 3 more characters at full health, and after that's all done it leaves a trail on the ground, and we don't know if that's a hazardous trail where if anyone, friend or foe, walks on it they might take damage, or if they're stuck there for the turn they might take damage. And another thing we know in the trailer is that whatever this attack is called, because unfortunately we weren't given the name of the blaze art, it costs Kai 14 HP to launch this attack. So depending on when he gets access to this, if it's an early game ability, that to some characters is either their full HP or at least 99% of their HP. So I wonder when Kai will get access to this blaze art, considering that is such a high cost amount. And we do know that you are going to get multiple blaze arts, so it's very interesting to see that we finally get one of his blaze arts shown off. And honestly, it looks really powerful. And like I said, for 14 HP, depending on when you get that and when you use it, for everything we see it do, that seems like a ridiculously low cost for something that does that much damage and has that much area of effect. Really interesting, and like I said, that's the reason why Kai's kind of jumped up there. And then the other thing we know about Kai is he's pretty much been the poster boy for the brand new class, the Flying Orneus Rider, that they've been showing off in the game. Now what's interesting about this class is it's treated like a regular mount, but also somewhat of a flying mount. Now what I mean by that is apparently in the X trailer that I'm going to be showing, you can see that there's a barrier between Kai and the enemy archer. archer. So basically what he does is, because the flying Orneus is somewhat treated as a flying unit, you have the ability to travel over that barrier. Now you're not actually flying. You can see that Kai actually just rides across the barrier, but that's very interesting because that opens up a lot of tactical avenues for you, because in older games you either had to go around the barrier or you had to break the barrier. But being able to actually just go over that without being a full flying unit is pretty interesting, and the fact that it seems like it's an early game class as well, like on the same level as like a cavalier or an archer, that's pretty powerful. It's literally, I think, on the same class of like a Pegasus and a Wyvern Knight at that point, minus obviously the full flying motion. But either way, looks very interesting, and it does open up a lot of tactical avenues for you and your enemy if the computer is smart enough to utilize that. So interesting and a great first choice for the class. But yeah, these are all the reasons why Kai to me now has shot up in interest, but like I said, not as much as the other three. The other three are still, I think in my personal opinion, the ones I'm more excited for, but I think this trailer did an amazing job of showing off Kai and showing off why he gets to stand shoulder to shoulder with the other three main characters. And honestly, like I said, caught my interest, so I'm looking forward to seeing what else he can do in the future. So now we get to talk about the person that's either going to be my first playthrough or my second playthrough of Fortune's Weave, Dietrich. And we know pretty much from the first trailer that he is pretty much coming to Dagda to participate in the Hero Games to find something to challenge it again and potentially kill it and win, and also looking for stronger opponents, which we just got in the second trailer, which made it more concise. We also now know 100% that he is from Fodlan. We all kind of figured that, considering he has more of a Western style armament as opposed to everyone else's more Mediterranean style, and the fact that he is one of the few people walking around with a god-killing weapon, you know, a hero's relic. And we do know that he is of the bloodline of Lamine, which of course is Yuritsa and Mercedes' bloodline. But another thing we do find out about Dietrich is that apparently he has a younger sister, something we didn't know about, and apparently he dotes on her immensely. So it's kind of interesting because now it's like the Yuritsa Mercedes thing, but pretty much turned around, because in Yuritsa's case, he doted on Mercedes, his older sister, and now that it's Dietrich, he's doting on his younger sister. So I find that very interesting. We also don't know if we'll actually run into his younger sister. I would assume Dietrich's probably like in his mid-20s, so if there's not a huge age gap between him and his sister, she could probably be around mid to late teens, but that'd be if she actually comes to Dagda, which I don't know if she'd have a reason to, but it would be kind of cool to have another pair of Lamine siblings running around, you know, kicking ass. So like if Dietrich's the more offensive focus, maybe she could be like one of the best healers in the game, like Mercedes was in Three Houses. Like she really was one of my best healers in the game, so every time I play Three Houses, I steal her from the blue lines if I'm not playing that. That's pretty much all the information we got on Dietrich. I mean, we did get to see new animation of his blaze arts because he's using Shadow Step, and I'll show it off. He did do it in the first trailer, but basically there was no animation. It was just him teleporting right there. But when we see in this trailer, we actually see there is an animation for him to do the Shadow Step. So I'm wondering if like how you can turn off battle animations, can you turn off blaze art animations? So I think they're just letting you tailor the experience to however you want. Like if you don't want to watch the cinematics and you rather just, hey, I've seen Shadow Step for, you know, the 15th time, I don't really need to see it again, maybe they give you that option. And another thing we know about Dietrich is the fact he starts off as one of my favorite classes, the Myrmidon, which then turns into the penultimate class, Swordmaster, which is my favorite in the entire franchise. And that's pretty much Dietrich. This trailer really didn't change my opinion on him. He is still either, like I said, going to be my first or second choice for a run through of Fortune's Weave because he just looks so awesome. And like I said, Myrmidons are my favorite classes, and he looks pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. How can you not love Alucard in Fire Emblem? That's pretty much all the information we could glean from this trailer for Dietrich, so let's move on to the next character. Now we're going to talk about the character who's in close running with Dietrich for either my first or second playthrough, and that being Theodora. We didn't get a whole lot of brand new information from this trailer on Theodora, so she might not be as more in depth as the others, but basically we did get the confirmation of her kingdom. Her kingdom name is, I believe, Saramis. I apologize immensely if I butchered that. And we do know that her father was murdered, because we do see in the trailer she specifically says that to a character. Now we don't know if she says it to the actual murderer or someone who was tied to the murdering of her father, and I think that's what plays into her desire for strength to serve her people. I'm thinking that potentially, now this is all theory on my end, that whoever did orchestrate his murder must be of a higher power than her and probably the other kingdoms on Dagda, and they're subservient to that. Now I don't know if that makes the divine sovereign that character, and maybe he had Theodora's father killed because maybe he was trying to, you know, become independent of that whole system, or we just don't know. But the fact that she is also semi-interested in revenge is pretty interesting in my opinion, and the fact that obviously she does walk around with an entire army, and we do get to see her in this trailer and in the X trailer as well, still using that army. So I'm pretty sure she's the only character who gets gambits in this game. It makes sense since she is a queen, and we do know that her starting class is nobles, so pretty much in the same vein as Edelgard, Claude, and Dimitri. I wonder if Theodora is going to get the same treatment, like, you know, go down the noble line, she gets her own things upon promotion, so by the end game she has her own special class, but that's just conjecture on my part. Another thing we get to see in this trailer is the fact that she is one of the 2 characters that we do get to see their blaze arts for, the first being Kai, obviously. Unlike Kai's, we do actually get a name for one of her attacks. This is called Earthen Throw, and basically what she does is she just shoves her fist into the ground, pulls out a rock, and literally just tosses it at you. We don't see the after effect of what happens, unlike Kai, where we do get to see everything that happens after he does the casting. So for her Earthen Throw, we don't really know what that does. Like, could it have the same property as Kai's, where, you know, it just travels away, hits an enemy, and then when it hits them, does it scatter just like his does, but instead of leaving like tough terrain, it just is like a shotgun blast? Or is hers more of like anyone that's in a line gets hit and it just keeps going until it hits its target? Or could another possible be she throws it and whoever it hits first gets the full damage? Now my question is, if that does happen, does it have any other special effects? Like maybe if you throw it and it hits the enemy, maybe that enemy gets knocked back like maybe 1 or 2 squares so you can reposition them for ally units to take them on. It's very interesting, and obviously this is just one of her blaze arts. We don't know the rest. If that does work the way it is, where it's more of like it hits hard but also can reposition the enemy for more advantageous attacks, that opens up a lot of strategic options to use, which I think would be interesting to see actually performed. But unfortunately, like I said, we don't see the after effects of her actually doing the blaze art, which in my opinion is a little disappointing. But it does make you think like maybe all her blaze arts are going to be tied to strength in some way. I mean, this is the woman who in the first trailer said strength I think like 5 or 6 times, so I wouldn't be surprised if all her blaze arts revolve around that. That's pretty much all the information we got from Theodora from this trailer, and I'm really looking forward to her. Like I said, just like with Dietrich, it hasn't changed my hype level for her. She's pretty much, like I said, top 2. It's either between her and Dietrich about who I want to do a first playthrough with. Honestly, she just looks really badass. Like, I think she's more badass than Edelgard in my personal opinion, and I think she's even more badass than Rhea. But again, all personal opinions, but I can't wait to see what more she can do going forward. And now we come to the final main character, who is possibly the most popular main character, because I did a poll on my YouTube, and I'll put the post up here if you want to see it. She pretty much beat out all the other main characters, and I can understand why. She is pretty attractive, and also, who doesn't love a good revenge story? Because that is who Lita is. She is a traveling musician on a quest for vengeance. And honestly, this trailer didn't show us anything new that we didn't already know about her. She still hasn't jumped up higher than Theodora, but I still put her above Kai in like what I want to play as. And honestly, she does look really cool. Her starting class is called Hunter, and we know it's a bow/sword wielding class because courtesy of the X trailer, you can see when she does her critical for the bow, she jumps up in the air and does a nice little flip before she hits the enemy, and it looks really stylish. We also do get to see her use the animation for Song of Passion. We don't get to see what the after effect of it is, but again, like with Dietrich, it was just showing us that there is animations for blaze art. That's pretty much all we glean from Lita. I'm sorry that we don't have a lot of information on that, but again, she is pretty popular. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people pick her as their first run through in the game, and the reason I say is because we have been confirmed that you are getting routes in the game. They make it very clear that you're picking one of the 4 main characters and you're following their story. Now, we still don't know if this turns into like, after you do that, does like something happen in the story where they all team up at the end, or is this basically like how Three Houses went, where you pick one character, which is a route, and you follow that from start to finish, which I think is a high probability. I personally like the other option where they all come together and fight against whatever the big bad is, but we'll talk about more of that in the story section of this video because I don't want to jump ahead of that, but that was my own fan theory about it. But like I said, I can definitely see her being a fan favorite of people, and honestly, she just looks very interesting in my opinion. So with all the main characters out of the way, let's take a look at the world of Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, because there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's really entertaining to see how this game is probably going to handle itself going forward. So for the setting of Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, it takes place in the continent of Dagda, which is pretty much south of Fodlan, and it is a massive looking continent. Like, I'm pretty sure you could fit Fodlan nicely in the center of Dagda. That's how big it is. We thought the story was going to take place primarily in Daxian. I believe that's the capital city, and we thought, okay, that's going to be the monastery phase of the game, you know, where it's like you do the main story event, then afterwards you go there, and then that's your base of operations, and you do what you need to do before the next main mission. And it kind of is, but what's different about this is the fact that you're not just confined to the capital city. Oh, no. During the trailer, they show us that you can actually explore Dagda. It is I want to say an open world, but it's a big area. Think of like in the same vein as Fire Emblem Awakening or Sacred Stones. Like, you can go to different places other than the capital city, which is amazing, by the way. And there are different icons and things you can do outside of Daxian, which looks really cool and interesting how you can spend your free time, because they even tell you in the trailer, like, how you spend your free time is up to you. So you're no longer just confined to the monastery. And what's also interesting about that is we seem to get a lot of time between major story events, because in the trailer you can see Kai is given about, I think, 172 turns before he has to deal with the next major story event. And what's interesting about that is we don't kind of know at the moment what constitutes the use of a turn. Like, if you do something in the capital city, does that equal to a turn? Or when you leave the capital city and go wandering around the map, does that equal a turn as well? Like, does moving to a next square equal 1 turn? Or does moving to the square and then doing the activity equal a turn? We don't know. They haven't really gone into great detail about that, but it's very interesting that they give us that much amount of time before we do the next main story event. So they really are, I think, encouraging you to enjoy your free time in this world. Another thing that's cool about this is the return of dungeons. So like in Shadows of Valentia, you can go dungeon crawling if you want to get better loot and all that stuff. So that's really cool. Like, the possibilities they're giving you for your free time is a lot more than Fire Emblem Three Houses ever had, in my personal opinion. That's really awesome. And then we also get a look at the recruitment system in the game, which looks like it's borrowing heavily from Three Houses, only because if you look in the screenshot, if I'm able to get it, you get 3 options when Lita is talking to this lady with green hair to see if she wants to join. You have gifts, recruitment, and character information. And in the recruitment, I think it specifically talks about you either have to do specific events or you have to have certain affinities for this character to join you. So I wonder if from Three Houses, like how you had to get a specific stat as well as a specific skill level. So I think for Felix, you had to get, I believe, about 20 in strength, and then you also had to have a B in swords to recruit him. So I'm wondering if it's going to be the same concept as that. But since we also seem to get like a massive amount of time in between, like I said, the main story events, there could be ways for us to recruit these characters a lot easier than you did in Three Houses, because Three Houses, you kind of had to pick which characters you wanted and kind of focus on them, at least on your first playthrough, to get them to join you. And the thing I didn't really like about that recruitment system, in my personal opinion, was some of it was also RNG based as well, because you could get them down, the recruitments, by getting them higher supports with those characters. The best one was getting an A support, because then it turned into any stat, but that was obviously on a New Game Plus. But if you were getting like royally screwed for stat growth in particular areas that you wanted to recruit this character, you could have been RNG'd out of it if you didn't have any supplemental items that, you know, helped increase those stats. So I'm kind of hoping that they move away from that for this game and take most of the RNG out of it and make it more something you can tangibly do. Like, you can tangibly increase your skill level with a sword, a spear, and anything else. You can also tangibly do a quest for these characters to join them. I just don't want them to rely heavily on RNG for that. So that's kind of what I just want, is I just want them to take away that frustration if that's the case. Just make it all something you can tangibly do within the time frame you're given, without RNG playing a massive role in the recruitment setting. And then something else I want to theorize about that, I kind of hope that in this game, there's not a lot of characters you can steal from other routes, if you know what I'm saying. Like how in Three Houses, you can literally go in and take almost all the entire roster from those characters and bring them to you, kind of leaving the other routes empty when you run into them later in the game. And I understand you do that because you don't want to kill those characters, but it also kind of detracts a little bit from it, in my opinion, because now they don't really have characters anymore. Like, they'll always have one character that stayed with them, but you basically took an entire army's worth of characters from them. So I'm kind of hoping in this, there are core units that you can't take, and it's more than like one character. Maybe like at most you could steal like 1 or 2 from them in their routes, but they have like a vast majority of characters that are specifically tied to their routes. So that way it constantly feels like a team, you know, like these are characters either story wise or whatever that join these certain characters, and they stay with that character because they have a reason to do that. And I think that'd be really cool. And then another thing we get to look at is the class system in the game. Now, we don't see a whole lot of on it. We just literally see Theodore wielding an axe, and then the next scene she pretty much becomes a Wyvern Rider. So I'm going to assume it's going to be kind of the same as Three Houses, where, you know, you had to hit a milestone of a level, and then for skill levels as well in order to transfer into that class. We also can take a look at some of the characters that are popular in the world, and some of them look really cool. Like in this one shot, if you can see it, Kai is standing around with a bunch of characters. We see this tan looking Nibetane woman with, I believe, pink hair and ember eyes, and she's standing next to what looks to be a really bawling guy in armor and cool looking dreadlocks. I wonder if he's like a knight or a general, but he looks really awesome. And we get to see all the other like side characters that join our main cast, and they all look really awesome in my personal opinion. And that's kind of why I said earlier in the video, I hope some of those you can't recruit on another route, and that those characters are specifically for those routes, so it can help build the immersion of like, hey, this is a team. These aren't just like random people, you know, that you're going to take from this, and they have no stakes in that person's personal story. You know, these are all Kai's friends. He made the effort to turn them into friends, and that's why they want to help him. Why you shouldn't steal any of Theodore's retainers. Like, these are people from her kingdom that are loyal to her and her kingdom and their people. They shouldn't be swayed by a random sellsword like Dietrich, just, you know, having certain requirements that they need. Like, those are the things that I think would make the experience better for the stories and the characters. But that's just me giving my own 2 cents on the thing. And like I said, these characters are just really awesome, and I can't wait to learn more about them as we go forward in the game. That's pretty much it on at least the world front. But now we're going to get into something that was really interesting in the trailer, and what looks to be a second story beat potentially, with some interesting characters making a return. So like I just alluded to, to, in the trailer, there is a actual shift in what looks to be tone and severity, and that basically happens at the point where we see this woman with green hair who could be a Nabatean holding what looks like to be a baby, talking about the underworld. And while she's doing that, it looks like a gate is forming around her that eventually leads to literal monstrosities coming out. And then we get a look at a character we've never seen before show up, but then we get a narration from Sothis telling us about this character that falls from the sky, clad in all white, wielding what looks to be like a bandaged up sword that somehow looks like it might be a hero's relic, and talking about how this character is going to help save the people of the living world. And then we're introduced to what could potentially be the avatar of the game. And the only reason I say that is because if you look at the cover art that hopefully I have up here, it's a really good looking cover art, by the way, like chef's kiss, it looks amazing. But if you look at it, we have our four main characters off to the sides, and dead in the center we have two characters, a male and female, cladded in white robing, white hair, and also amber eyes, and both wielding the spear that they came in on, and they definitely look to be the avatar characters of the game. Now, we know their name is called Ishmael. We only find that out because if you look at a screenshot of the art book, you see it says Ishmael on them, but we don't learn that in the trailer. No, Sophis doesn't even say anything, even though she's narrating all this, and we don't get any more information on these characters, because then the next thing we see is Sothis herself coming down the stairs from her throne, literally talking about whoever she's talking to, did they have fun upheaving the world, and basically is about to condemn them to death because she pulls out an axe and literally what seems to be the stroke and kill. She then says, "Be gone, the darkest of dark." Now, what makes that interesting is it seems like that's going to be the main story going forward after the heroic games, because up until now we thought, oh, the heroic games are just going to be what it is. That's going to be, you know, the context of the story. It's a gladiatorial combat. But then with Sothis and Ishmael showing up and the advent of the underworld coming, it changes everything now, because now it's no longer just like, oh, these interpersonal conflicts between these four characters wanting their wish. Now it seems like it's going to be a continent spanning problem, especially if the underworld is going to take over a big role in all this. Again, this all came out of nowhere, and what's also interesting about this is we don't know the role Ishmael and Sothis are actually playing in all this. Now, obviously, I don't think Sothis is a bad character, and I don't think Ishmael is going to be a bad character either. Obviously, I think they're good guys, but we don't know the extent of their involvement in the story up to this point. Like, we don't know, is Sophis in Dagda, and if she is she acknowledged as the goddess like she is in Fodlan, or does she take more of a backseat in that history, and she's just more of an entity that's there that, you know, doesn't really get super involved with mortal affairs and just watches the world as like a guardian? Or does she actually get more involved? Because we're seeing someone who's getting a lot more involved and putting a lot more agency in all this to prevent what looks to be an underworld invasion, to the point that she's even sending this like avatar-esque character, this angel, to help save the people of the living world and help guide them towards defeating the underworld and whoever the true bad guy seems to be. Whether that's the Nabatean woman who enters the gate with the baby. We don't even know if the baby holds any significance either, because we can't tell if that's a Nabatean as well or if it's someone else. And we don't even know if that baby is connected to Sothis in some way, or even Ishmael. It's interesting because, like I said, we're going from the interpersonal stuff and now we're focusing on more of a conflict of the world. And I wonder if Sothis is going to be able to convince the other four to maybe put their differences aside and come together as a team, or maybe the four have their own personal goals and they don't work well with Sothis depending on what she's trying to do, and maybe that might put them at odds with her or the others just because it's like, hey, my ideology doesn't match up with yours, or I don't agree with how Sothis is doing this, or I don't agree how this is going, and maybe that could turn into a conflict. Now, I don't think it would turn into the point where you're going to have the post-war split where you're basically killing the other lords in order to get what you want. I don't think they're going to go that extreme, at least in my opinion. I think it'd be more of trying to get them to understand why they should work together as opposed to tear each other down. Now, whether that means you actually come together and form a big army and take on the big bad, that's unknown, or maybe it's just them coming together and you just use those route characters and maybe you get a couple extra for endgame purposes and you just go through the endgame as their story, but you're all teamed up together, you know, you're all united front, you're just not using everyone. So potentially maybe, you know, there'll be a battle where, let's say you picked Kai as your main character, okay? You're going through that, maybe there's a battle where you'll have green units of like maybe Theodora, 2 of her units, Dietrich, 2 of his units, Lita, 2 of her units, and that's the battle. Like, you can't control them unless they give you the ability to do that, but like, they're there on the field helping you because they acknowledge now that, hey, whatever this problem is, this needs to be solved. Like, we have to put our differences aside and actually deal with this, because if this goes through, none of us are going to get our wishes or endanger, like, you know, the people we love and care about. So I think that's a very nice narrative twist if they go that route. Now, they obviously could go the complete opposite and make it so that, hey, you know what, it's time to kill the other main characters because lols, that's what we wanted to do all along. There are so many possibilities for this story to take shape and go with this that I'm very interested to see how Intelligent Systems is going to handle that, you know, because like we don't know what kicks off this second act. We don't know what Sothis is doing within that time. And if we've never seen Ishmael and this is their first time showing up in the second half of the game, does that mean when we start the game, we don't pick Ishmael at the start? We pick them at the start of the act 2 of the game, which would be very interesting. And obviously, will they then become the main focus of the second half of the game? You know, like if the heroic games end or something happens, like, you know, now we switch our focus from like Kai, Dietrich, Lita, Theodora, you know, and we switch it to Ishmael and Sothis and their side of the story, and then we just go from there. I think that might happen. I would be a little upset if it did, not because I don't like the idea of them taking a center stage, because now we're dealing with like, you know, a conflict-wide problem, but it does feel kind of cheap that now, you know, these characters that you picked, you went through their stories, at least for the first arc, now they're kind of not as important as Ishmael, so now you're basically becoming like the Byleth again. All speculation on my point, because we don't have any concrete information at this time about this second half of the game and how it's going to go. I mean, shit, this could be as epic and crazy as the war arcs that we get in Three Houses, because there's some crazy stuff that goes on with that. That was just me doing a little theory crafting, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And, you know, please let me know in the comments, what do you think is actually going to happen in the second half of the story? Do you honestly think that, you know, we're going to shift focus from Kai, Lita, Theodora, and Dietrich and just focus on Ishmael as the main character going forward for the rest of the game? Or do you think hopefully they'll do a more nuanced dance where it's going to be, you know, the four and Ishmael kind of weave and interconnect with each other to tell a riching endgame story? This is just me spitballing, guys. Like, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say on this aspect personally, because there is so much story potential here, but ultimately it comes down to Intelligent Systems and how they want to tell the story. But I'm really excited for this because these were turns we weren't expecting, and hopefully we'll get like one more major trailer that either goes into greater detail about the second half, or at least gives us an inkling of like, you know, what is Sothis and Ishmael's true intentions in all this, and who could potentially be the main bad. Like, you don't have to reveal the main bad to us right then and there, but like maybe, you know, plant the seeds there as we get closer to release. But that's kind of some of the crazy information we got from the trailer, and I have a little more to go over with you guys before we do that, so we'll just jump on to pretty much ending the video. Why don't we, you know, start wrapping it up, and I'll go over some of that new information with you as well, especially involving the release date, which I think a lot of us are really looking forward to actually knowing now. So just like I said, guys, I'm not going to keep it any longer. The release date of Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave is September 17th, and it's coming in 2 editions, the Standard Edition and then the Dagda Collection. Now, for the Standard Edition, the price is going to be $79.99, so basically the same price as Mario Kart World. But in my personal opinion, I feel like it's got a lot more content than World, but again, I'm also not particularly happy that it is $80 as well. Am I going to pay it? Yes, but that's because I love Fire Emblem, and I think it is good money for content that you're getting from the game, because you're literally getting 4 routes, and for all we know, there could be a secret 5th route, like how there was a secret 4th route in Fire Emblem Three Houses. So that's pretty much what the Standard Edition is going to get you. And then we move over to the Dagda Collection, which is basically the collector's edition of the game. That's going to run you $119.99, and what that's going to get you is the physical copy of the game, a cover, which looks really cool, by the way, because you can see all 4 of the main characters staring off at the main capital city, some tarot cards, a mini art book where we actually get Ishmael's name, and then a big ass poster of Dagda itself. So in my personal opinion, I think the price they're asking for is okay for all the stuff they're giving you. I do know that since its reveal, it has been going in and out of stock at certain retailers. I know some retailers are completely sold out at this moment, but I know Nintendo's apparently been restocking these, so it looks like it's not going to be as scarce as we all thought it once was. But with all that said, guys, we finally made it to the end of the video. This was such a fun video to make and talk about, because honestly, talking about my most anticipated game of the year gets me so hyped. And the fact that we got a brand new trailer with the release date, we got the collector's edition and the standard edition. Not the biggest fan of the price on the standard game, but I'm still going to get the game because I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan, and honestly, I think this is going to be a great game. Everything I've seen, it looks like it's just going to be like Fire Emblem Three Houses, but bigger and better. And honestly, I think that's the best we could ask for, because since Three Houses was the best-selling game in the franchise, I have high hopes for Fortune's Weave, because I think it can stand up there, because they have the opportunity, if they just take everything from Three Houses and just improve upon it. I think this has the potential to rival Three Houses as one of the best games in the franchise. And that's just me saying, because honestly, like I said, I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan, and I love talking about this game, and I love hearing about your excitement for this game as well, or even Fire Emblem in general. So guys, let me ask you a question. When you get the game, if you get the game, who is your first route going to be? Like I said, for me, it's a toss-up between Dietrich and Theodora, but you know, Lita and Kai, I'm really looking forward to doing theirs as well, because I am going to play all 4 routes eventually, maybe not all at once and marathon it. You know, I'm looking forward to finding out about all these characters, and who knows, like like I said, there might be a secret 5th route, but please let me know who you plan to make your first route and how excited you are for this game as well. And also give me your theories about the story, the characters, anything else on this game, because honestly, like I said, I just love talking about Fire Emblem with people and games that I like as well. And I also want to thank you guys for helping me get to 500 subscribers. I do want to make a personal video about that as well. Just got to find the time to do it. I'm rambling right now because I'm just so hyped about this game. But again, I want to thank you guys very much for watching the video. If you made it this far, I want you all to have a great day. I want you all to be safe out there. And remember, let's rock.